this working? Yes. Hi, everybody. It's such a blessing to be here with you tonight. So, yeah, my name is Ingrid Honkala, and my path of awakening started when I was very, very young. As you just guys heard, I had a near-death experience when I was just, I'm like, sure? Okay. So I had a near-death experience when I was close to 3 years old. And what happened was that at the time, my parents, both of my parents worked, and they would leave us at the care of a maid. In Colombian culture, at the time, it was very normal to have a lady living in the house, especially because Colombia was a country of war. So these young ladies will come from the rural areas and live with a family where they were safer. So she was living with us, but what happened is when my parents left for work, she wouldn't really pay attention to what we were doing when my parents were not around. So early one morning, they left, 6 in the morning, and she went to her room and decided to lie on the bed and rest. And my sister, my oldest sister was close to 4. Like I said, I was close to 3, and the youngest was 1. So knowing that we already knew she went back to her room, so it's like, let's sneak out of the room and have some fun. And we decided to go in the back, to go play at the back of the house. And at the back of the house, there was a big tank. And the purpose of this tank was to collect water for hand washing clothes. At the time, we didn't have a washing machine. So next to this tank, there was a flat surface where people would just wash the clothes. And being little and not thinking about any danger, my sister and I thought, what if we play catch across the tank? Because we saw a ball. So we grabbed the ball, and she sat on the flat surface next to the tank, which she was a little safer. And yeah, because we were playing catch across, I had to go the other side, and it was a thin edge. So I just kind of bended my knees like that, and we grabbed a couple of stools. This was a big tank. This tank held about 900 gallons of water. So I went, grabbed the stool, climbed this tank, and I went on the other side, bending my knees just like this, like very precautiously. But hey, again, 2 years old, what is the danger? Let's just have fun. And in one of starting to play, my sister threw the ball at me. And she didn't apply enough force, and the ball fell in the water. And I have to tell you that this experience is so vivid and so clear in my mind that I can even remember that the ball had engraved letters on it. And I can even remember the pictures on the ball and the texture of it. So that's how vivid it stays in the mind. And then when she threw the ball, like I said, it fell on the water, and I leaned forward because I was going to grab it. But I didn't know physics. I didn't know that if you touch it, it will roll. And it rolled on the surface of the water, and I fell. And people have the misconception that because I'm from Colombia, I come from a hot weather country. But that's not the case if you were born in Bogota, Colombia, which is high up in the Andes. So the temperature up there early in the morning could be around 30, 40 degrees Fahrenheit. So the temperature in this water was pretty cold. So that was the first impact. The first thing I felt when I fell into this water was like this freezing temperature of the water. And at that very moment, I felt like my chest had like imploded, like, oh, and I couldn't breathe. And at that age, I never had been in a pool. We didn't have a bathtub, so I didn't know that if you fall into water, you drown. So imagine the shock, like, what is going on? Why I cannot breathe? So the incredible thing about this experience is all the contrast. that happened throughout the experience. So that was one of the things. At this moment, when I am in this state of absolute shock and horror, in just like that, boom, I went to state of absolute. I didn't need to breathe. I didn't need to fight anymore. I was just in the state of well-being. And there was few things that happened that were very interesting. One thing is that this tank had a roof on top to protect people. People could be doing hand washing when it was raining or anything. So, and because the whole tank was made of cement, it had the appearance of being very dark. So this was one of these incredible points of contrast, because when I fell in the water, the last thing I saw with my eyes open was darkness. Space was very dark. And then I saw a light that came from below. And then that light was enough to illuminate the whole watery surroundings. And the other incredible thing is that I was born in a house where there was a lot of noise. I have two sisters. I had some cousins living in the second floor. We had birds, dogs. There was noise. It was always noise. And when I fell in the tank, the last thing I heard was my heart, like pumping in my chest, like a drum. Boom, boom, boom. And it's when I went into the state of absolute peace, it stopped. And I remember experiencing what I call the silence behind the silence. It was so incredibly amazing that I craved this silence for the rest of my life. And when I was little, I would look for a closet, for places where I could go and find that silence. And then all this was happening, and I was in this state of well-being. And then when this light came on, I started to see bubbles suspended in the water. And these bubbles were surrounded by light. So it was by chasing these bubbles, like, whoa, what is going on? That I turned around and I saw a body suspended in the water. And at that moment, incredibly, I had the realization, I had the knowing that is my body. And it comes the other contrast. I was born as a very sick child. And I spent the first 3 years of my life feeling unwell. So guess what? When I saw that body suspended in the water and I was in such a state of well-being, oh no, I'm not going back there. What for? So at that moment, I also had that clarity that I could make the decision not to go back to it. And I turned around and left. And when I left, I started to see flowers blooming from nowhere. And then I was picked up by the flowers. And then I went to experience what I call is like the sense of going back to the womb. It's this place where you don't have to do absolutely anything. You are being done. There's nothing to really care about, worry for, nothing. And when I was experiencing this incredible state of bliss, in just a blink, boom, like that, I appeared in the maid's room. And I was looking at her from above. And she was lying on her bed, completely unaware of what was happening. And I just said, oh, that's Maria. And these guys, again, it's so vivid that I can't even remember that she was listening to soap opera in the right. And since nothing happened there, again, in just a flash, boom, I appear in my mom's path. So my mom had left that morning to go to work, which she didn't have a car. And she had to work to catch her bus, but it was a long distance. She had to cross all these neighborhoods to get to where she could catch her bus, and it was about 10 minutes walk. And then my mom was almost close to her bus stop when I just appeared there, and I said, "Oh, that's mom." And guys, at that precise moment, she stopped, and she knew that something was happening at home with one of her daughters. And she didn't even hesitate. She didn't give any other step. She stopped, she turned around, and she started to run back home. And I was looking at her, but I got distracted at that moment by the realization that wherever I put my mind, I could go. It was like time and space had vanished. And I was having so much fun, and I started to play a game of going places. Oh, look at the doggy, boom, look at this, whoa. So I was just having fun. Then forgot about mom, forgot about everything. And at this moment, like everything in this experience, just a blink, I appeared in a realm that was made of pure, bright, shiny light. And this was the first time in the 3 years of my life that I felt that I was home. It was that sense of being welcome, the sense, and although I didn't see anybody or hear anybody, it was like, oh, I'm being welcomed home. I'm finally home. And although I saw my body suspended in the water, up to that point, I didn't have the clarity, the realization that I was not Ingrid. And that's when I started to have that sense of, I'm not that. And then I started to dissolve and to be part of the whole. But I was still having that sense of self. And then that even went away. It all dissolved. And I experienced what I call the state of non-self, or the state of, I call it nothingness. And when people ask me what nothing means, I said, the moment I tell you what it means, it becomes something. So you cannot talk about it. It's only a state of being. The only thing I could say is a place where there's no feeling, no meaning, no context, no color, no vibration. It's just a state of being. I only could say it's a state of absolute presence and pure consciousness. And when I was experiencing this state of being, my mom finally arrived home. And although we live in a big house, she knew exactly where to go. And she went in the house, she directed herself to the back of the house. And my sister, she was still there, trying to get me out of this tank, but she was too little to be able to help me. And also, people ask me sometimes why she didn't go to the maid, because we were afraid of the reprisal. So she was just there trying to do whatever she could, but she couldn't reach me. And my mom came inside, and later in life, I learned the purpose of she being there was for my mom to know that I was in the tank. And this is another beautiful thing. My mom worked with children, and she was trained CPR. So this is amazing how everything plays its part. So when my mom got me out of the tank, she knew exactly what to do, and she did what she had to do. She said that I was like a raggedy doll, like no pulse, no breathing, my lips were blue, my skin was, she said that I was just, there was no life. And I was so distracted where I was that I didn't feel anything she was doing, no connection at all. But then again, like everything in this experience, in just a blink, I felt that I had jumped from the tallest building in the world. And there's nothing I could do to stop this. It was pretty much like, no. And I was being pulled, sucked like a vacuum. And I knew that I was back when all the feelings of discomfort and pain and the lack of freedom were back. and I was not happy. Then that's when things started to go really hard for all of us because I was a very unhappy child after that. I didn't want to eat. I did not want to live. So I refused eating. I just was angry. I didn't want to be here. And the other thing is that I came with an awareness that I did not have before that. So right after I came, I just look at my parents and I have the clarity, these are not just my parents, they are my equal. Because I had experienced oneness. And when I saw my body, what do you think? I thought, I'm not this baby. What is going on? I'm not that. But of course, I did not have the language developed yet to talk about this. But I also came back with skills I did not have before. And right after my near-death experience, I could read and write. I could resolve mathematical problems. I could put complex puzzles together. So it was like, what is going on with this child? But incredibly, instead of bringing good at the time, it was not understood. So it was like people were more like, this is not okay. And even at a school later, when I brought all these, I was this bright child. And at the time in the schools, there was not the school system of, oh, this kid is bright, let's help. It was like, oh, you know everything, you sit in that corner and let the rest of us be. So none of it was really being used for good. So it was really hard. The other thing is that I didn't feel like I was like anyone else. So when I would look to other children, imagine this, I had this clarity and I would say, what is happening with these people? They don't know anything. So I couldn't relate with other children. And then I started to just pretty much ostracize myself and started to get very sick. Didn't want to talk or be touched by anyone. But the help that I needed came in the most remarkable way. And not long after my near-death experience, I started to have experiences that were very similar to the one I experienced when I had my near-death. And I was just being brought to a realm, like that realm of the light. And I would just go to sleep and had all these series of things happening, changes in frequency, colors, movements, things I have never experienced here. And I would just appear in this realm. So the only thing that I really wanted to do was to go asleep because this was school. And yeah, at the time my parents continued working and everything. Of course, they fired this lady, but they hired another one that really didn't care much either. So she didn't really care that I would sleep forever. It was actually better that the girl wasn't doing much other than sleeping. So, but that was actually what I needed at the moment because I was experiencing what I was experiencing. And in one of these journeys, one day I experienced the presence of being completely surrounded by light. And they were shining in all different colors. Wow, that was amazing. And then in another one of these journeys, one of these lights shining in pure gold shaped itself into a human form. And it approached me and it touched me. It was to me to show me I am like you. And at that moment I said, oh, you are a being of light. And that's how, when I started to call them beings of light, I was very young, 4 years old. And then, all I wanted to do was to sleep. But then we need that balance because I cannot be sleeping. Oh, well, now there's the child that never woke up now. So we need the balance. So it was a day that I was taking a shower, just being all relaxed, taking a shower. And then I saw, it was the first time a beam of light appeared right there. It was shining huge, this blue intense light. Like, now the beams of light are here. And incredibly, I started to heal. And I started to feel better. And I started to communicate more with my sisters and with my parents. Because up to that point, I mean, like I said to you, I was in such a state of distress. And I would look at myself in the mirror. And I would just scream and go to my mom and say, you don't understand, this is not me. This is not my name, and I should not be here. So thanks that this started to happen, I started to kind of feel like, oh, this is good. Now the beams of light are here. And although they didn't do or say anything, just the sense of feeling at home, that was the sense it was brought back to me again, I am home. So that's something I learned over time. That's what they wanted to show me. Home is not a place, it's a state of being. So if I didn't have to go anywhere, they were here and now I was in that state of peace. But because at the time I was still not really identifying with who I was here and with my name, I was still throwing tantrums, big tantrums. And there was a day when they were calling me to dinner and I'll be like, I didn't want to be called Ingrid. I just couldn't identify with this. And then they came and like, don't you hear? We're calling you. We're calling you. And I said, Ingrid, and I said, don't call me like that. And they said, then how should we call you then? What is your name? And I said, I do not need one. Then that's when the beings of light started to talk with me. That night I was sent to bed like, oh, we had enough of this child and these weird tantrums. And then I went to bed and it's the first time I heard. And it was this incredible voice. So now I was not just seeing, I was hearing. And the voice said to me, it is going to take time for them to understand that names are not needed in the realm of the light, as you already know. Oh, that was amazing. So now I understood why I did not need a name. And they started to explain to me that all the things that were happening and all the things that were going to happen were all experiences that that were going to happen in my life to help me and someday to help others. And that someday that all these experiences that I was going to have were going to talk for me. But they said that I had to be patient. They said that the people couldn't understand, and I couldn't understand what is not to understand. That was weird. But yeah, soon in my life, I realized that they were right. When I tried to talk at a school or with our church priest, it was like, oh, you sit there and you pray because these are the devil. So yeah, I was raised as Catholic. Colombia was very, very, just 98% of the population was Catholic, very strict. None of this was accepted. There was no opening for any of these. So I realized pretty quick, yeah, they're right. Not safe to talk about. But they said also to me, we will always be here. You can talk to us. And they said there will be people that will be put in your path to help you and to guide you. And yes, they were right. Incredibly, one of the first people that actually really realized that I was seeing something was my mom. And this all happened because I was in a school. Since I couldn't talk, guess what? I was, okay, I cannot say anything. Let's draw. Let's paint. And I was painting beams of light everywhere. So in my notebook, everywhere, just painting the beams of light. It's just what I was experiencing, and it was so incredibly good. And then the teacher, they already thought at school, this was in kindergarten, they thought that I was kind of weird already. And she came to me and she's like, what are those? And the sun and the stars? And I said, no, those are my friends, the beings of light. Oh, we need to talk to your parents. Because they thought I was having imaginary friends. So they called my mom. My mom came to school and she just sat there and she was a teacher. So we started to see all this stuff and I just started to turn around to her and say, I needed somebody to believe me. And I turned to my mom and I said, Mom, because I also was painting auras because I thought everybody saw auras. And when they were pointing at all these, looking like, what the heck? I just like, Mom, these are the colors that we wear and these are my friends, the beings of light. My mom made these mom eyes like, oh, pretty much stop talking. And I just was so sad, so devastated. But when on our way home, my mom turned to me and she said, I believe you, because I also see things that others can't see. Like, what? And that's when she revealed to me that she had been able to see spirits since she was about 3 years old. But she could not, it was forbidden to talk about it. So very little she learned that she could not talk about it. So that was incredible because at that moment, my mom said to me what the beings of light had said to me, you can talk to me, but you cannot talk to anybody. I'll be here for you. So that was amazing because she was the first person I felt, oh my God, I have somebody to talk with. And later, when I was 6 years old, is when I saw the first spirit. That's a long story, so I'm not going to tell that story now. But once this happened, oh, I was so fearful. It wasn't like the same thing I felt when I was with the beings of light. And that's when I told my mom, Mom, the spirits and the beings of light are not the same. And then my mom was like all surprised because she thought that I was seeing what she was seeing. And I said, no, Mom. I started to explain what I was seeing in more detail. And she's like, I was 6 by now, so I had more clear language. And she's like, she just got all emotional. I said, I think what you're seeing, are you communicating, are with angels. And I said, Mom, but they don't have wings, because that's all they knew, the Catholic teachings. And they don't have wings. And my mom said, but it has to be your protective angels. So then I went asked the beings of light. By then I've been already talking with them a couple of years. And I just went and asked. First I asked, what is with these spirits? Because they cause me fear. So I thought that the spirits, the answer was going to be, yeah, we're different or whatever. And the answer was incredible because they said to me, we are all the same. The only difference is the level of awareness you have about who you are. The fact that you leave this body don't mean that you wake up. Then I also said, my mom said that you are angels. Is that what you are? And the answer was absolutely beautiful because they said to me, we are what you want us to be. So that's so beautiful because that's how compassionate is the universe. It presents to us in the way that we can understand. But yeah, then I went in my life from that point on, and it was feeling different from everybody. But also another incredible person that appeared in my path was my grandmother. She was a very rebellious woman. She was raised as Catholic, but she just always had this thing like, I don't want to be like anybody else. And I don't say that this is a good thing or bad thing, but she was the first of the women in Colombia getting divorced because she was forced to marry when she was like about 15 years old. And my grandfather was like 40 something. So that's how things worked back then. And he was like, oh, he was a rich man. She was a pretty girl. too much, and she hated that. She was rebellious, and when she had the age and the strength and felt powerful enough to leave, she did. And she started to learn all these other things. She's like, I don't want to be Catholic. I want to learn other things. She just joined the Rosicrucian order, and she started to learn about Buddhism, Hinduism, all this stuff that was different. And she brought these teachings to our home. And when she arrived to our home with a picture of a guru, a Hindu guru sitting in a lotus position with a big aura, I'm like, oh, Grandma. I just felt now there was somebody I could talk with. And then she was the one that taught me meditation. So I started to meditate when I was 8 years old. And she brought me to the first Buddhist temple when I was 12. And it was at this Buddhist temple when I told the monk, hey, but my grandma's too busy and I don't think we can come back very often. And he said, you never have to come back because you already have a temple. And I said, what do you mean? And he said, you are the temple. So you can bring this breathing practice meditation wherever you are. So my life just became like that. And incredibly in Colombia, a Buddhist temple was unheard. But these things open in our path because that's the path I meant to follow. And I started to meet this teacher and this other and this thing. And by the age of 17, 16, I already knew that the core of all teachings was the same. But we have become stuck in the ritual. But the core of all of it was love and oneness. But then another thing happened. I mean, imagine through all these years, I was going to a school and I was always the different girl. I didn't fit anywhere. I felt like I was an alien. I just couldn't really relate with anyone else that wasn't close to these spiritual teachings, and that was not many at the moment I knew there. So by the time I was 19 years old and I was going to college, all these boys was of course appearing into our lives. I had 3 more sisters, beautiful, all these, and I'm like, oh gosh, I just have to be different. I was tired of, it's when my uniqueness became a burden. I didn't want to be this way. I wanted to be like everyone else. I wanted to be like my sisters. So incredibly, there was a moment, and things in my house with my parents were at the verge of divorce. Everything just was happening like chaos. And I was sitting in a bus, and I just said to the beings of light, I wish that none of this was real. And guess what happened? The bus started to dissolve. And I started to see all the organic and inorganic constituents that made this bus possible. And I started to see how all these particles, all these was making this possible. And I could just have that knowledge of vibration and frequency and movement and everything that made everything possible. And with the bus and with everything, I disappeared. And I experienced the same state of nothingness I experienced when I had the near-death experience. But now I was sitting in this bus in complete awareness here. And wow, everything came back. And I came back with 2 very profound questions. I said, how is it possible to forget who we truly are? And when did we stop being one with the whole? But I had a third question at the time, because up to that point, I had become a victim. Because I didn't want to be this person, because it was sad, life was so hard, I was different. So the third question was, why me? Why this is happening to me? And at the moment, I wanted all this to be done. And it's when the beings of light said to me that I was going to become a teacher. And I said, no. I don't want to change. I want to be like everyone else. But that's the free will we have. It's that choice that we make at that moment. And the universe is compassionate. Okay. So the answer to why me, why this is happening to me was answered in 20 years, you will understand. 20 years? You kidding me? You are the one asking for this. So you will have that clarity later. And I put the example that is like, for those first 19 years of my life, I was in a room with the lights on. So I knew where everything was. All the furniture here, you walk, you're not tripping because you have the eyes to see. What happened when I turned off the light? So I told them, can I just be by myself? Of course, the beams of light never went anywhere. I disconnected. And incredibly, that's what happened after that. I turned off the light, and guess what? 20 years of sufferings. I started to trip into everything that was in the dark room, which is all the challenges, all the things. But incredibly, to lower the vibrational energy, it wasn't just like that, like in one day, okay, you're down. No, because when you're vibrating pretty high, there was actually even a process for that. And I met the guy at college, and I didn't meet the guy that was the most spiritual, because I would not have lowered my vibrational frequency. I chose a career when that was science. And two, I chose to date the guy that was like a heavy metal, listen this music, all like grounded in this world, because I needed to ground in order to experience that I was experiencing and that I was asking I wanted to experience. So 20 years passed, and then I found myself one day in the deepest depression. I have gone through many things. I lived in a war zone for 3 years. I seen death, I seen poverty, I seen so many things. And in all those years, as we mentioned, I became a scientist. I became a marine scientist. One thing is, people ask me, if you drown, shouldn't you be scared of water? And I said, it's actually the opposite. Because drowning brought me to see the light. So I just had this thing for the ocean. I wanted to feel and know the depthness of everything. So I went through all these years, my career, all that, and incredibly, the time passed. That happened when I was 19, and when I was 39, I had the possibility to know some people, and I ended up going to Dharamsala, India, taking the teachings of the Dalai Lama, and taking his refugee ceremony with him, and I spent 1 week with him in Dharamsala, India, and all that started to serve. I'd say the water, you have water, a glass of water, and the bottom has all these maddie that is being collected through all the years, and it started to get all stirred up. And I fell into that very deep depression. And I wanted to actually die. I was done with this life. But what had happened, I have disconnected. I realized I disconnected through the source that gave me so much joy. The beings of life, spirit, joy. And then it's when I went back to pray, but to pray in the sense of not just take this away. Help me see. God, help me see what I cannot. The suffering was such that I wanted to see the light again. And then the answer came the next day, very clear and very simple. Go to see a psychologist. And it wasn't like, oh, should I? No, it was clear. And things happened in a way that I went to meet the exact person. The synchronicities were amazing. And I went to meet the psychologist. The person was amazing. And one day he said, he said, I want you to write a list of all your suffering, because writing is cathartic. And I said, I'm a scientist, I don't write suffering. Well, I wrote the list, and the list was so long that when I showed the list to him, he's like, in my 37 years of practice, I've never seen someone that has suffered this much and is mentally stable. And I'm like, whoa, I didn't even know I was the one that suffered that much or anything like that. I'm like, what? And it's when that question came back with all that power again. And I looked at him with his anguish and he says, why me? Why this is happening to me? And he gave me just the answer that was the most simple answer, but the one I needed to turn the light back on. Why not? What? And at that moment, I realized that this guy has been listening, because he started to say, look, thanks to this, you have been here. Thanks to this, you have done this. Thanks to this. And my mind started to, my neurons to fire in my brain. The wow! And I started to see purpose behind everything. And at that moment, I started to realize that everything had happened for a reason. And it was the first time that I put myself at the level of the cause and not at the level of the effect. And it's when I started to experience what true forgiveness means, that there was nothing to forgive, because nothing had been done to me. It had done for me. So I could be where I was at that moment. And then I grabbed my car, and I was in this state of like, whoa. And I'm driving the car, and the same experience I had 20 years before happened in the car. So it's when I realized that 20 years had passed. They said to me, in 20 years, you will understand. And I'm in the car when I started to sense that what we call source or God or presence or ultimate reality, whatever you want to call it, was everything. There was nothing that was not it. The wheel, the windshield, the street. And the answer to the two questions I have asked 20 years ago came like no time. And remember, I asked, when did we stop being one with the whole, and how is it possible to forget who we truly are? And the answer was, one never stopped being one. One never left the source. One just became distracted and seemingly forgot. Then at that moment, I also knew that nothing was what it appeared. And the beings of light started to communicate very clear with me again. I have not heard it for a while. And then they said to me, nothing in the universe lacks purpose. They also said to me, learn to ask the right questions and you will have the right answers. And the right question resides the right answer. And it's when I started to actually ask simple questions that I didn't even ask before. And it was, what is the purpose of this and this? And I even asked, why my near-death experience happened when I was so young? And they said, because you were old enough to remember, but young enough not to be conditioned yet. It's clear cut. And I asked why my near-death experience happened. And they said, because you were going to bring the message of the purpose of connection, importance of the power of connection. And I said, how? And then they showed me, remember when you were drowning that you chose not to go back to your body? Guess what? That was not what was going to happen. You were here. But why you think you went look for your mother and for the mate? Because you were going to come back. So I said, then why did I go to waste time and stop at the mate's room? Why didn't I go directly to my mom? And they said, because that's the contrast we wanted to show you. You went to the mate's room close, and she was so close to the place where you drown. But because there was no connection with this person, she could not feel you. But what happened when you went to your mom? Unconditional love, complete connection. She was the farthest, and she was the one that saved you. So it's when time and space, there's no distance in love. And they said to me, when there is no connection, they will let you drown. When there's no connection, war will happen. So that's how powerful our connection with and forming those bonds of connection with all of us save the world. Then I also understood the purpose of my uniqueness. Remember, there was a point where I thought, oh God, this is a burden. And now is when I realized that each one of us is a unique expression of the divine. And I was able to see the whole plan as a huge puzzle, and how each one of us was a unique piece in that puzzle. If any of us is missing, guess what? The puzzle is not complete. Or how when you have a big tapestry, what happens if you pull a string? There's a gap missing. I also put the examples of the finger and the fingers and the hand. Each finger is absolutely unique. But what happens if you chop this finger off? Can it do anything? No, by itself is nothing. What happens when they work together? They accomplish it. And guess what? They're all unique, but they're attached to the same hand. It's the uniqueness that encompasses oneness. And that's the work that we come to do. Not to compete with each other, but to work together. That's the power of connection. And the other thing I realized, the beings of light, is when I asked, what is the purpose of time? Because now I also realized that it was not the experience, like I'm saying, it was the purpose behind the experience. So I asked them, what is the purpose of time and experience? And the answer was, the purpose of time and experience is to help you remember who you truly are. To go back to source. To go back to alignment. And only in that place of alignment is when you start asking the right question. But to be able to go back to the core of who you are, you have to know thyself. You have to become an observer of yourself. Only then you can go back to the I am that I am. That presence, that space, that source, that light. We are the light of the universe. And each one of us is a unique expression of that light. But if you think about it, a light, a little candle alone, flickers with the wind. But what happens when we combine our light? We become a powerful flame. And we're able to illuminate the space for even the ones that cannot see. Because each awakened being can serve in the awakening of hundreds and thousands more. We are here to be the light for each other. So today, and with all these that we're doing, I invite you to remember who you are. You are the light. And we're here to work together as one. So with this, if you guys have any questions, I am open to answer anything.
Can you hear me now? Yeah.
Yes.
All right. So it would be really great if you keep it close to your mouth so it can be heard. And Chuck, I know you're in there. If you've got any questions, let me know. You got one? You got one? Okay. Who's going to raise their hand first? There we go. Thank you.
Hi, I'm curious to know if animals turn into beings of light too, maybe someday? Or do they have to go through the cycle of being humans first to remember who they are because they can't comprehend an animal form?
We are all an expression of consciousness. All of us. Even animals, even plants, even objects. We're all an expression of consciousness. So all of us will go to different stage of awakening and different stages of the process of waking up to get to the realization that we are conscious.
Thank you.
Yeah, and that's just, I love that question because like there was something before we go to someone else. The beings of light just shared to me recently. They said to me, "You don't imagine the state of gratitude in which all beings would be if they realize that for each one of us to be possible, there has to be an agreement of trillions of particles, trillions of particles to agree to be together. So for you to be who you are, there's a divine intention. Even for the objects, even for the animals, even for the plants. So even when you grab a glass of water and you drink it nowadays, like, oh, I'm drinking source. Because guess what? Everything is an expression of source. Yes.
Thank you. Right back here.
Ingrid, thank you. You're a fabulous speaker. My question is, do we have to recycle, in other words, be reincarnated?
Yeah, what happened is like the beings of light has explained to me, and like I was saying, the fact that we leave our human form, like say we change the clothing, we take this clothing off, doesn't mean that we have awakened. Doesn't mean that you already know who you are. So what happened is that say we pass, we leave this clothing, we die, like as we call it here in this realm, we die, and now I go to whatever dimension it is, like the non-physical dimension, we just go to the other realm, we call it the other side. And then some beings that have not awakened at all yet, they still have a very keen interest on the matters of this world. They're so attached that they cannot see anything else. So these beings, they have, that's actually, we don't see it as a gift, but being here is actually a gift because it offers enough contrast for us to know how it feels. What, to explain this more clear, consciousness, you're not conscious that you're consciousness. So you have to go through all these experiences of contrast to be able to realize who you are. Like say, you don't know or you could not appreciate health if you never have been sick. You would not know what health is. It's not possible. So if we don't have all these contrasts, I could not know what joy is if I have never experienced suffering. I would not know that I am awareness if I am not unaware, if I don't go through the time of being unconscious. So all the experience in this earth offer enough contrast for us to be able to see those two sides and see where we are and put ourselves in that place of like, oh, I have not awakened yet. So yeah, if you are not yet knowing who you are, then you will come back. Because that's the way for you to say, like I put the example of the school. If you went to first grade and you didn't pass, you have to repeat. So it's the same thing. You will go back and you know it's for your own good. Because if you don't pass that grade, you will never be able to be good in the next one. So And that's actually a gift we give to ourselves. We just don't know that. Yes, yes. And why it's actually needed? Because, yeah, we are not aware that we are aware.
Right. This is kind of a segue from the last one, reincarnation. By the way, Ingrid, you're as good second time as you were the first time, because I was here the last time. In the reincarnation question, and you may not want to answer this, but do you ever get the feeling that you are coming back volitionally to teach others the Satori idea?
Oh yeah, it can happen too. Like it's, and that's, that's the work that many of the teachers do, because sometimes you could have most of the teachers that say you're at college, or teachers that are from the first grades, and the teachers that are from the middle school, and the ones that teach PhDs. The ones that teach a PhD usually won't go back to teach kindergarten. They are way too advanced. But it could happen that one of these people realize, these other children need to learn. Maybe I have things to offer. What if I just go back there? And that's an act of surrender. That's an act of compassion, an act of kindness. What if I know I have all these traits, all these things, and I have all these qualities, I can go there and teach. And with these qualities, it's the sense that they're going to learn faster, and this being is bringing all that light. So yes, it happens. And it's actually, I was shown by the beings of light, there are beings in this universe called frequency holders. And the work, they're very all beings, and the work they come to do is pretty much bring balance. So they are, and every time any of these beings connect with each other, we have what is called these threads of light connecting with each other. And they are bringing balance to the planet. So it's just what you see, these beings that are so awakened, so compassionate, so kind, so giving. They're not involved in anything. They're just here to say, just to hold it together. Just be that pillar of balance. So yeah, there's many of these beings that will come to do that work.
And that gives me a question. Do you see these pillars or these threads in your life at this time? Do you actually see them?
Yes, I do. Yes.
My
And that's
one?
beautiful
No.
when these connections get established and you just have these encounters, and now these connections become stronger. And it's happening even more. All these beings are being given the possibility to re-encounter and to meet. And then now they know the existence of each other, so the vibration raises. And that's why there's been a big awakening in the planet right now. More and more beings are even interested in little things. Oh, is there an afterlife? Oh my, I'm not just a body. Oh, is this other thing? What is a dream? Things that people didn't even care before. It was only the materialistic aspect of everything. Oh, I have money, I don't. I'm here to be happy. What is happiness? I don't know, but maybe money brings me there, until we all fall to that space of empty, something missing. Why I cannot be happy? Why all these things are not giving me that? Because when we realize we are disconnected from source, we're looking in the wrong places. And then all this is now coming up to the light because people are starting to ask the question. And then yes, ask and it will be given.
So, Ingrid, thank you for sharing. My understanding is there's positive and negative threads or cords. understand what I'm saying?
At the end, I think we will come to the realization that nothing is good or bad. Absolutely everything is serving a purpose. And then it's incredible, even after going through so many sufferings, when I had the realization that all this was there for me, I never thought in a million years I could be grateful for some of the really hard things that there was. I had experiences where I was almost killed and I was almost raped and murdered. Things that were very extreme, very hard, and I wouldn't even change that because that brought me to where I am today and awakening the deepest compassion and the understanding the pain of the other, why this person is in such pain, because I have been there. So it's when we actually open our eyes and the only thing I could feel was gratitude. And I was in this, and guess what? Gratitude is the most elevated state of being I can be in. Because when do you feel gratitude? When you feel great. When you feel great, you're elevated. When you're elevated, you are connected. Like a radio, you put your dial in that place where now you can see. So it's like when people say, would you change anything? I said, no. It's when you reach that point where you realize that everything is perfect. There was a little time where I was going through a little, because we keep going through, no matter how awakened we are, there's these challenges because it brings you to the next level and to the next level. And then I was having this crisis thing, and I just went back and said to the beings, like, oh God, how can I go back to self? How can I go back to my inner self? And at that moment, I had the absolute clarity that self was nothing I thought it was. It was not my name. It was not this. It was not my. It was none of it. Not even my aura, my what I thought about self. Then it's when I realized why nothing was outside of self, and it's because self, with capital S, is the totality of everything. That was nothing can be out of self. And at that moment, even I was having an argument with a sister. That's why I was having this. That was perfect. Because if that argument didn't happen, I didn't have this awakening. It's the next level. So everything was perfect. I even loved that argument. Oh, I love you because you fought with me. See? It's perfect. My mom, she's been through so much suffering. All her life, I've seen her sick. There's always some sickness. And we all used to think, oh, God, I'm sick again. So we stopped having that compassion. And there was this moment once I had this amazing awareness and knowing that everything was perfect. And she was visiting, and I saw her. She was out there working with the garden. And I looked at her from far, and I just had a sense of absolute and complete love. And I love every one of her sicknesses. I love your liver that doesn't feel good. I love your eyes that don't see well. I love your head that hurts. I love you no matter what. And the moment I gave that unconditional love to my mom, she didn't even know I was feeling this. Guess what? She was visiting me and she healed. There was a moment when I was working for NASA, I was working for the Navy, and I had this big awakening. And I wanted everybody to just know this. Like, if you could know this. And it's when the beings of light said to me, I asked them, what should I do or say to these people? And the answer was absolutely amazing. Because they said to me, do or say nothing. The light of your awareness is all they need. They say, be that. Be that embodiment of the light. Be that you are. Be that compassion. Be that love. Be that peace. Be that kindness. And the day that you need to talk, the words will come. But as long as you are the embodiment of that, you're already doing the work. So even that day with my mom or at work, I didn't have to tell her, Mom, I experienced this. And the world changed. You don't need to change the world. You only have to change yourself. And the world changes.
Actually, I have two questions. So you said that we would come back to keep growing and getting enlightened. Is it possible that when we go to the other side, because we're encompassed with all that light and all that love, that we would then grow to the point that we don't need to come back here?
Yes. Yes. And actually, even like at different levels of what we call different dimensions, we're multi-dimensional. But all those different dimensions of being, we can be at service. Even people that died and they go to non-physical realm and now they're in mission there because they can now help the beings that are at that level of awareness. And you can grow more and they now help beings that are at a less level of awareness and so on. And that's why all these beings, when later on I learn about ascended masters, I ask them again, like, and how are you? Are you ascended masters? And they say again, we are what you want us to be. But I said, then what makes you different? They say experience, evolution, how awakened you are. And only experience can be that. How evolved, how much experience you have had. And how all that bring you to remember who you are. So there's levels, there's beings at many different levels of awareness. Then that's when we talk about angels and ascended masters and other, some levels of beings that are
Second question is, I don't know if your guys have told you, but why, when you have a near-death experience, so many come back, and then the other ones?
because this is just part of what, like everything else, this is just the part of the work we came to do. Like in my case, it happened so young because I meant to remember quick who I was. So I could be a purpose. With my work, imagine I was born in a country of war, in Colombia, Catholic teaching, nobody was open to any of this. Guess what? Just the light that I brought transformed my entire family. Not just mom, dad, sisters, cousins, uncles, friends. That's why I said the light of each one of us can change the world. You are a purpose when you shine in your light. Oh my God, now you are. So I meant to remember, and all these beings are just have that purpose. Remember who they are, and these experiences open that door because now we're able to. I before I go to you, there was an experience I had that was, oh my God, so shocking. It was one of these spiritual experiences in what we were going to be robbed at the street, and I pretty much the experience was that in the middle of being robbed, being three men was there. I was with a friend. He was an atheist. He was angry. He didn't want even to be here. And these three men was pretty much taking everything. The idea was to rob everything from us. And they raped his watch away. And I was standing there. And the three men was here. He was here. And he was looking at me like in absolute shock. And I was in the scene, but I couldn't even move, talk. And I realized I'm just an observer. And once they ripped his watch, took everything, the man left, and I said to him, "Oh my God, it's when I was able to move and talk again." And I said, "You're bleeding. They scratched your arm. Are you okay?" And he said, "The watch doesn't matter. My arm doesn't matter. Nothing matters. The only thing that matters is that you were not here. That's why they could not rob you. Were not." And then I said to the beings of life, "Ah, I didn't know you could make people disappear." And I said, "That's the power of the unlimited mind." And I said, "But wow, guess what? This guy, oh, forget about being ethic, forget about a near-death experience. Guess what? He woke up and he became at purpose with what he had meant to do with his own self and with what he had to do here in this planet." So it comes in many different ways. It's not just near-death experience. And you don't have to have a near-death experience. So I asked the beings of light, what was that? And they said sometimes extreme measures are needed for someone to wake up.
Sorry, one more question.
Oh,
So you said that the beings of light and the spirits are separate, but they are the same because we're all the same. But are there masters or perhaps beings of lights that go to the spirit realm to guide spirits onto ascension of some sort?
yes, we are all at service with each other. So yes, we are all helping each other, and the beings are working at all different levels. Yeah, so they will be even ascended masters that come to this realm, this physical realm. And in reality, if we could rip the veil apart, we will realize that there's not even dimension. There's only one. There's all here and now. But because we still have this layering, then we still thinking and seeing things as layers. But there's only here and now. But that's okay, because we have been so conditioned, and we have so much condition in our mind, and the amount of layers that we have, that healing those layers take time. And that's when all these beings that already have healed their layers can come and start, and they show us the way, and experience happen and start evolving, and little by little peeling all these. Remember what happened to me in the boss. I'm sitting there, everything dissolved. I am in the state of totality, wholeness. Did I go anywhere? I was there. So we don't really go nowhere. We are enlightened here and now. We are nowhere and we are everywhere, here and now. But say that we have these glasses, have all these little lenses, and little by little we peel every lens until the day we remove the glasses and there's no more of division. There's only one. They gave me this beautiful example of a house. And it's a house that is made of many rooms. And in every one of those rooms are all our stuff. The room of the pain, the room of the anger, the room of the loneliness, the room of... We have a house. So the beings of light said to me, oneness starts within yourself. So if today I ask you, you want to go out to watch a movie? A part of me wants to go, a part of me doesn't want to go. Also, you are broken apart in pieces. What is the part that wants to go and what is the part that doesn't? Because we are broken. Why? Because all this suffering, all this conditioning, all these beliefs, all this pain. So that was an incredibly beautiful example of duality, how we're broken in pieces. But then with all this that we're doing, even the fact that we're talking tonight, we are creating what is called, let's give it a name, the spiritual environment, or the place where we realize there's something else. And little by little, we can start going to all those rooms and clear them out and work with our anger. We were talking about that last night, how we can work with, instead of running away from pain, from anger, from loneliness, from whatever it is, we start facing. We start, instead of keeping, every time a room I don't want, I lock it. No, open the room and step in. Then little by little, we start creating a house, which is just one house. And little by little, with one of part of the house, they show me this beautiful analogy, will be a veranda, a room with no walls. Until you have a house, a temple with no walls. There's only one. But we go through all this process to get there.
So with that, Howie, would you like to read the one from online?
I'm going to do the one from online, and then we have time for one more after that. Online says, what are some of the ways to help connect with those who we might conflict with, have different beliefs, or am having a hard time with, and be able to maintain, fulfill our purpose, especially when you might get in your own way in being able to truly love others?
So yeah, that's part of what I was mentioning before, a little bit. Like one of the things that the beings of light made clear to me since I was very young, they said to me, your path is the path of gentleness. You're not here to convince anybody about anything. Because the moment we start trying to convince anyone of anything, you start a new war. Because I'm right and you are wrong. Just shine your light. Just be that. The moment you enter in a space and you are this joy, this love, you don't need to say a word. You don't need to convince anybody. Be the example. Walk your talk. Be that love. And you don't really need to say or do anything else. And you start respecting the other one's beliefs until that person by themselves. If those beliefs are bringing suffering into that person's life, that person will realize this is not serving me. But no one is convincing them. The more you try to convince, the more resistance you're going to create. Let others be. And be who you are. People ask me what is spirituality. They think it's something, I don't know, out of the world. What? Oh my God, I have to meditate 10 hours. So, no, spirituality means be who you are. Be your authentic self. And you're being a spirit. You're going back to the root of who you are. I think the question people should ask, if who I truly am is joy and peace and love and greatness. So the true question is, what am I doing to deserve it? Oh, and now I start cleaning my own house. I don't have to clean the house of the one next to me. If I'm doing that, it's because I'm lacking. Be that yourself. And the rest will change.
we were talking. I agree with most of what you said. I do. Um, and we're talking about being multi-dimensional, and then we touched on ethics, and most of everything you said is. I don't want to be a stick in the mud, but
Yeah, yeah.
so of course, miracles. We
Mhm.
right? And so one of the ladies in our group, she meditates and prays, um, but she asks for safety. And so I asked her, why do you pray no matter what happens? And there's dark. What's your opinion?
I just think again that it's just what contrast is duality. So we always have had, and that point of contrast is the one that brings us to see the other aspect of things. Then people call darkness, and when I call the light, I just, for me, the light is what I call awareness. When people ask me about free will, I said, we don't even have to do what free will. You think that I have free will because I chose what I ate for breakfast? I'm conditioned to eat that. Or I will be eating cockroach or a snake or something else. I'm conditioned to wear these clothes because I'm in this culture. I will be wearing something else. But that's not free will. The only thing that can be called free will is you choose the path of suffering or the path of awareness, which I also call the path of light. What is light? Clarity. Then in life you have the two paths. The path of like the story. I received this teaching lately. It was beautiful because I was thinking about frequency. What all these frequencies, frequency, other frequency. And in non-dualistic terms, I received the answer saying there's only truly one frequency, source frequency. And you're connected or you're disconnected. You are in or you're out. So but in reality, it's just one thing. When you see you're connected, you are aware, or you're aligned, or you're disaligned. You are aware, or you're not aware. So only through all these experiences we become aware of it. But sometimes we have to go through all that path. So it's when you choose this path of, I'm in the cul-de-sac. I call it a cul-de-sac of me and poor me. So I tell the story of Ingrid and poor Ingrid. I am the victim of my life. So it's when I call to go to this road that doesn't have an end. Or it's when I put the example, you're sitting in your car and you're pressing the gas, you put in all this energy, but you never put the car in gear. That's why you're not going anywhere. Then you're stuck in this until you stop and you make the decision. What is this for? Of looking for the awareness of it, the purpose of it. What is this teaching me? But for that, you have to observe and you have to become aware, I'm not going anywhere. And that not going anywhere is what many people will call, this situation will call darkness. Or this is bad. No, this is actually what propelled you at some point to make the decision to take the other route. When I pray, I don't see prayer as this thing of like, oh God, change this reality, change my sickness, awareness or bring me somewhere else. To me, true prayer is God help me see, or source help me see, because I cannot see. Bring me to the place of awareness. Bring me to the place of clarity, because I'm blind and I don't know what this is for. Then I ask the question, but the moment I ask the question, I already have some degree of awareness that this is not serving